Right. So, when conducting this study, what did you find specifically connected social media and mental health issues?
Well, the biggest take home message from our study was that there were some connections between adolescent social media engagement in terms of frequency of checking social media, but more importantly, just the number of different applications that they are active on, and also how active their parents perceive them to be, and some indications of mental health. So things like parent reported depression, parent reported anxiety, um, adolescent self reported loneliness, and fear of missing out or FOMO. Probably the most important finding in our study, though, that was pretty unique and I think would make a lot of sense to us, is that those adolescents who were more active on social media in terms of having more accounts were only rated as higher in depression and anxiety if they also reported a fear of missing out. And so what that means is that teens who are on social media a lot don't necessarily experience more anxiety or depressive symptoms if they're not that concerned about it, if they don't have high levels of FOMO or fear of missing out. So, sort of one of the ideas that we have from our results is for those who are heavily invested in what their peers are doing on social media, they're better off not being active on social media. But teens who are active on social media don't perhaps experience the same negative emotional impact if they don't really care what other people are doing. So social media is definitely part of our lives in many ways. I think we all differ in terms of how much we engage in it. But besides just mere engagement, what we really have to pay attention to is how much importance people put on it or how much stress they put on it.
And can it cause any specific issues besides depression and anxiety?
So the cause issue is tricky because we did not in our study follow teens over time to look at sort of what came first. Did the depression and anxiety come first, and those who were sort of feeling down seek out social media more, or does the social media activity come first, and then we have the negative effects that result from it? So we really, in terms of trying to understand this as a science, don't have a clear sense of the cause, or like I said, which came first. One of the things that we do see in terms of social connectedness, because that's important for teens, is that those who are on social media more tend to feel more lonely. And so on the one hand, we think, well, shouldn't social media give us an outlet to connect with other people, especially if we're not physically around them? On the one hand. On the other hand, we do sort of, it does sort of make sense to us that if we're on social media a lot, we may be seeking out connections that we feel like we don't have. Or if we see that other people are enjoying themselves, going on trips, doing these things, we may start to engage in some social comparison with how their lives appear to be as depicted on social media with how we feel like our lives are. So we have some theories in our field about what's going on in terms of cause and effect and things like not just depression and anxiety, but perceived loneliness or perceived lack of connection to other people. But there are a lot of sort of unanswered questions with that research so far.
Okay. And can this affect all ages, or did you specifically conduct the study on teens?
Our study was 14 to 17-year-olds. I do think that we'll see some interesting, and I haven't done this research, my interest is with adolescents, but I do think we'll see some interesting effects if you sort of think about young adults, college-age students. But then I think if you extend that to older adults who had a life without social media before social media existed and now are finding themselves in many ways active on social media, I do think there are going to be some developmental differences in terms of how we change, how we interact with people as we get older. I think also we're going to have some interesting differences in terms of what our life experience has been like, either never knowing a world without social media in the case of teenagers versus older adults having a life before that and thinking about how much importance we put on it. So we don't have comparative samples with different age groups yet, but that's something that I'm interested in. Other people in this field are too.
All right.